Amen. You may be seated. I'm going to tell you, I'll let you put your hands over your ears. I'm going to try this mic one time. So don't panic, please. So yeah, it could be we're having a heck of a time, but I thought I'd at least try it and see how we do. So far, so good. Excellent. Good. I'll avoid the speakers, and we'll see how this goes. I'm not going to set that on there because that music stand fell on me the last time. I don't want to crash and burn my iPad.
Oh yeah. No, I heard what he said. I heard all too well what Jesus told that man, that thief that he was hanging next to. And you know what? It was drastically different than what he told me. You see, the day that I encountered Jesus, I dropped to my knees right in front of him. He had my respect from the start. You see, I wasn't looking for a handout, okay? I explained to him that I had done the hard work. I just needed to know, was there something that I was missing? Was there some good thing that I needed to do in order to inherit eternal life? And you know who? Sell all that you own. That's what Jesus is for. Sell it all, and you'll have treasure in heaven. Yeah, right. You see, I was always taught that salvation is a reward for a life that is filled with good works. It is not a handout that you give to people that can't muster up enough character to earn it themselves. My wealth is a clear indication of the favor that rests upon me from God. I had asked about eternal life, and this disgusting shell of a man, he's the one that gets it. Jesus told him the day he died, he would be in paradise. This man could bleed a drop of goodness that he had borrowed. No, that he had stolen from the righteous man that he's hanging next to. He was a thief, and I'm the one that is treated like I've been robbing God all along. I offered to do what I needed to do. This man offered nothing. All he could do was ask for mercy. And that's how he got salvation. That's how he got eternal life. It was just given to him. Like it was a gift.
It's just not fair, is it? It isn't fair. How many years did you work at that job and not get the promotion? And the other person worked there 5 and got it. How many people are living on death row today who haven't had a day of cancer in their life? How many of you can say that? It's not fair. And therefore it proves that God doesn't exist. Because we've decided who God is. Even though Jesus came to show us, live it, and explain it, we know better. We're college educated. We got a lot of letters at the end of our name. Ask me, I got more alphabet soup at the end of my name than I know what to do with. And I don't have that many. But it's a whole lot more than I know what to do with. Come on now. Look at the person beside you right now and tell them it's not fair.
It's not fair.
Because it's not. The Yankees are going to win again. It's not fair. And we just talked in Bible study about the Patriots won the Super Bowl again. This is not fair. But you've spent your whole life in church. You were in Sunday school. You taught Sunday school. You went to youth group. You went through confirmation. You did a First Holy Communion. You became a member of the church. You were on church committees. And on top of it, your family is written on the stained glass windows. Not only were they written, but they might even be the first ones written. You sang in the choir. You might have even played the piano. Probably not as well on the violin as we heard this morning, but maybe you did. But I doubt it. And yet, in a few minutes, the pastor is going to play some dumb video with some loud new song that you don't like. And you're not going to sing it. And I know I can't talk to them this morning because they're not here, because they're not coming back until we worship in that building. Because God's only over there, right? God couldn't have been at the cross. That's what the rich young ruler said. Couldn't have been there. Why in heaven's name would God have been there? We haven't even begun to talk that you've worked and you planned so hard, and pastors in the past, that everything would be in one location, and now, dadgummit, that guy from Jessup comes in, and that stupid conference says it's going to be in 3. I'm not going to Jessup. Dorsey isn't going to Jessup. Jessup isn't going to Elkridge. Whatever, it's because we've decided God's plan. It's just not fair that Jesus recognizes us in all 3 locations. Because we want him to recognize us in one of the 3, whichever one of the 3 it is. It's just not fair. You know, those evil people. Those people. Remember what those people are? You know, sort of like they tell us how to do things. Because they write all the books, whoever they are. You know, it was just that. But Pastor Rick, you know, it's almost like they're terrorists. Oh my gosh, did he use that word? It's not political correct. We can't use that word today. What does that mean? Well, guess what it means? The Greek word translated from the cross is not thief. It's terrorist. That's the equivalent. It is a real lowlife. Kagoros, K-A-K-O-U-R-G-O-S. It can be translated as one who is an evil working person, a violent one who works for destruction in evil ways. Now, you translate it into English and tell me it's not terrorist. We're not talking about a guy who stole a couple of toothpicks or a soda from the 7-Eleven. We're talking about a violent man who is a criminal, who's described literally as someone who does evil. Do you remember when the towers went down on 9/11? Do you remember what the famous quote of the time was? Evil now has a face. That's what was on the cross that day. That's what was there. Think about it with me for just a minute. I mean, what is the makeup of a terrorist? It's someone who just desires to create trauma and disaster for the sake of fear and fear alone. Oh yeah, people died. I'm not belittling that. But a true terrorist really only wants to make us live in fear. This man on the cross enjoyed watching people be in fear. And if that meant having to murder to do it, he would have done it. That's why they were on the cross. You didn't get crucified for shoplifting. And yet, at least the young rich ruler had to ask, why? How does this work? Now, what you may not be connecting here is that this young ruler had just been through this a couple of months before the crucifixion. It had just been a few months that he had met Jesus in his ministry, and Jesus said this. Now, a lot of us have taken this whole scripture on the young ruler to say, see, you do have to earn. Because Jesus said, go sell everything that you had so then rich people can't go to heaven. He didn't say that. The young man asked him. The young man was a believer. He wasn't a new Christian or a new follower of the way. He was a believer. And he said, he was trying. And he had acknowledged all the things that he'd been doing. He said, what do I need to do? And Jesus took him back to the original law. Why? Because that's where people were coming from. That's where we come from. Here's the original law. The law was to help us. The law was to give us guidelines. No, but the law became an idol. The law became, if I do 1 through 10, I get 11. Okay? A lot of us still believe that. A lot of churches are still preaching that. And it's not true. And it really wasn't true then. Believe it or not, it was not true. In Judaism, it was you were going to receive the grace of God and you lived the law in honor of what you were getting. Not in order to get it. They already knew God's grace was abundant. He had already brought them out of the wilderness. They didn't have to live the law to get out of the wilderness. Oh, he got mad at them whenever they didn't follow it. But in this case, the young man comes up to him and he says, Jesus, what do I do? Because he was struggling. He didn't understand. And Jesus said, well, here's what you got to do. And he said, I've done all of those things since I was a young child. And Jesus is going, So you've been living those things out, celebrating the grace of God. Apparently not. You've been living them out thinking you're going to get 11 for doing 10. You think you can earn your way into God's grace, and you've missed that God's already given you grace. Okay? That's what you missed out on. And so Jesus looks at him and he realizes what's blocking it. Why the young man can't get it. And he realizes that he has another God. And it was his wealth. And you heard him. My wealth is evidence of God's blessing on my life. Now, we all thank God for the blessings of our car, our truck, our homes, whatever the case is. However, so does that mean God isn't blessing the guy up on the corner who's waiting to beg for money when you leave church? Not true. Because he is. God's grace is still free to him. Just like he said, it's free. It's there. So Jesus looks at him and he says, here's the deal. Then you got to give up all you own. And he goes, that ain't right. That ain't right. So I got to earn it, is what you're telling me. Well, he just told Jesus he'd been trying to earn it. I mean, it's sort of like we do to our kids, we do to one another. Okay, you want to earn it? Earn it. Knock yourself out. I sometimes used to give my students just enough rope to hang themselves. And then stand back and they go, but coach, I don't understand. Really? Didn't work out? Oh, I'm sorry. I knew all along it wasn't going to work out. So that's what Jesus says. That's why he had to give up his riches. Not because he was going to earn it. Don't you fear God even when you have been sentenced to die? This was the thief, the terrorist on the cross. After the other one had been hurling insults at Jesus. Get us down. Fix it. You're God. And he says, don't you fear God even when you've been sentenced to die? We deserve to die for our crimes in verse 41. But this man hasn't done anything wrong, pointing to Jesus. Obviously not pointing.
Yeah.
Not literally.
Right.
Then he said, but this man hasn't done anything wrong. And then he said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. This is the terrorist, folks. This is not a nice man. We all think, oh, what a nice man. He probably shouldn't have been on that cross to die. Look, he really loved Jesus. No. There's people sitting on death row now who love Jesus and know Jesus. But when they entered, they didn't. They're going to die for what they did. This man was going to die for what he did wrong, but he is at the point now that he realizes, oh my gosh, he said, I don't know much about this man, but there's something about this guy in the middle here that whatever's going on in his life, I want you to remember me. I don't want to be part of it. I'm not asking anything off the line. I just want you to remember me when you come into your kingdom. The thief is saying, I don't care who else goes. I don't care if someone is worse than me. The thief is saying, I don't want to be with Jesus just part-time. I want it for all eternity, not because I've earned it, not because I deserve it, because I got nothing else. I got nothing else. He was seeking the peace that passes understanding. You know, there's sometimes when we're hanging in pain, experiencing darkest moments of our darkest days in our life, we could have never imagined that we'd be suffering what we're suffering through. Some of you are in that day right here today. Some of you are just hours, minutes, months, years away from that moment. From it happening or from it already have happened. That what you think has been your darkest hour has already occurred, and yet you have no idea what's out in front yet. You're hanging on the cross in your darkest hour. Right now. Right now. And that nature and character of Jesus is that he is the God who is with us today. And you're looking around and going, where? Where? No, he's right here. Always has been, always will be. So when you're hanging on that cross of foreclosure, Jesus is there. When you're hanging on that cross of the marriage about to come apart and explode into pieces, Jesus is there. When you're suffering through those terrible twos or potty training, and your kid's about to kill you if you put them on that potty one more time. Jesus is there. And for some of our parents who are trying to manage their job and their spouse and their kids and their house and everything else, if we've forgotten, those are times that are dark. Jesus is with you when your teenager hits puberty. And their voice changes and their hormones, they kick into high gear, and you wonder who or what has possessed your child. Now, before you get too full of yourself, for all the teenagers in the room,
I want you to know.
it's not fair. When mom and dad jump into headlong, and they jump into some crisis in their midlife, and I don't mean a funny one where they go buy a Corvette or something. I mean one that ends up tearing your home apart, one that rips the family apart because they can't see beyond themselves because that's their new puberty. even if they live in the wake of that. And you are living in the wake of that. Because they can't handle the responsibility anymore. You're not alone because Jesus is there in the middle. Yet you're getting drilled in the heart. Your home is not what it was when you were 5. And you just have to remember Jesus is there. Grandmoms and granddads, and there's a few of us in the room. When you wonder if your kids and your grandkids even care if you're alive. And you look at their lives and you can't understand why their life has 70% debt above their income. And they won't listen to pay with cash. And you know it's tearing their marriage apart. You know it's tearing their family apart. And you know ultimately it will destroy them. And it is not only a burden, but it's ungodly. May you know that when they're racking up debt that will wreck their lives, that Jesus is with them. On the cross, Jesus is with a terrorist thief. And he says the words that many terrorists long to hear. We often hear. In 2019, said we know what a terrorist wants. They're going to go to paradise. Right? They're going to go to paradise. What does Jesus say? Truly I say to you today, you will be with me in paradise. Every good Jew knew exactly what Jesus meant here. Because we all want to argue, well, is it heaven? No. Paradise. Where does the Bible begin in Genesis?
Paradise.
Garden of Eden.
Begins in Garden of Eden, paradise. Same place. Every good Jew knew that one day the Garden of Eden would be restored. And Jesus said in that, they also knew that every king in his palace had a beautiful garden. And rarely did anyone get invited to the king's garden. But this king on that day invited a terrorist into the truly king's garden. From Genesis through Revelation, Jesus is talking about living in the garden of life with him. Getting back to the garden of life. Getting back to the perfection of Eden. The second magnificent word from the cross means this. Today you can be with me in the garden of paradise. That's what he meant. Is that in heaven? We can argue that in theology class all we want. But the point is that Jesus says you will no longer be subject to the struggles of this world. Because we were made to be in that garden. That was God's intent from the very beginning. We chose not to be there. That was our call. The rich young ruler missed it. So the question is, will we miss it? I mean, look around. Look around, either physically or mentally. Where is Jesus? The scripture said it was clear. There was one upon the right and one upon the left, and Jesus was in the middle. You're on the cross. We already acknowledged that. Whatever your cross is, whatever the struggle is, on whether it's cancer or whether it's simply age or job, whatever it is, where's Jesus? Because one of the two thieves, one of the two who were terrorists, said, I got nothing left. And I want Jesus. And he got it. Jesus is right beside you, just like he was there. And he's waiting. He's simply waiting to say, remember me. Or forgive me. Which, by the way, has already been done. That Christ on the cross, done. It's over. Forgiveness is already there. It's just a matter of whether you accepted it or not. It's already done. You're not waiting to get it. You're not going to earn it like the rich young ruler. It's already here. You are forgiven. Do you believe it? Do you believe it? Because he's waiting for you to ask to join in paradise for today and for eternity. And it will change your life now. He's asking you to call on him now. Lent leads us in the holiest days of the Christian faith. Some of us have been Protestants for so long it only belonged to the Catholics. Some of us who were raised Catholic found it was a ritual that we had to do in order to do good things to get a reward. It's something that we do to remind us that there is the greatest event of all time ever happened coming up in April, and it is the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That's what we're called to. And that's what that thief terrorist got, and the rich young ruler missed. You're going to miss it, you're going to take it. Amen.
Amen.
We join together, and our last song will be